Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. We hope you all had a good lunch. My name is Christine Lastaca Saludes from Miriam College Lower School. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. We hope you all had a good lunch. My name is Christine Lasaca Saludes from Miriam College Lower School, and I'm so happy to welcome you all to this afternoon's session, Session 2, which is entitled Place-Based Learning in Philippine Schools, Tapping into the Power of Place as an Effective and Alternative Learning Management System. This session offers simple learning design principles that leverage the power of place and not just technology, as most LMS do, in the age of the new normal. One's home, community, society, and its surrounds become the new classroom environment, while the continuous symbiosis of seasons becomes the new curriculum. Here, both teachers and students make a strong and advantageous connection of discovery. Teaching and learning become more engaging, grounded, and relevant. As the talk is ongoing this afternoon, we encourage audience members to post your questions or comments at the comment section of this Facebook page, YouTube channel, and we will ask these questions or read the comments during the Q&A portion. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Father Norman Melchor R. Peña Jr. from the Society of St. Paul. After finishing his Bachelor of Arts and Master of Arts, both in theology from the Catholic Theological Union in Sydney, Australia, Father Norman took a postgraduate diploma in management from Macquarie University and a second MA in communication from Griffith University, also in Australia. He then earned his doctorate in social communications in Università Pontificia Salesiana in Italy, graduating summa cum laude, and another doctorate in educational leadership and management from St. Paul University, Manila, also summa cum laude. Father Norman currently serves as Dean of Studies at St. Paul University in Sinang, Cavite, and is a lecturer at Jesus Good Shepherd School in Imos, St. Paul Seminary Foundation, Inc., and Divine Word Institute of Mission. He is also currently lecturing education and communication courses at St. Paul University, Manila. When I met him yesterday to prepare for today's session, I could feel his passion and commitment in deepening communication. For education, he told me, is equated with communication. And for as long as people communicate on earth, then we all have much to learn and do. Ladies and gentlemen, Father Norman Melchor R. Peña Jr.
So thank you very much, Christine, for that wonderful introduction, not only of myself, but simply, more importantly, is our topic. So the topic that we shall discuss today is something that's happening in the Philippines, might be something that is new, but it has been actually applied already many, many years ago. Pero ngayon, with the situation of COVID, I think it's very timely that we actually do it too. Most of the things that I will share now is actually a product not only of my education here in the Philippines, pero education that I have learned as well in overseas, being away for 25 years. from the Philippines, just coming back last 2015. I went away 1989. 25, I was 15 years in Australia. Tapos 11 years ako sa Italy. So, most of the things that I will tell here are fruit of my experiences on how education, sabi natin, and the place-based learning would have a place actually in the Philippine educational system. So I would start, if slides please. I would start with this quotation, which is actually something that I love dearly. Sabi dito was, place-based education is anytime, anywhere, that leverages the power of place and not just the power of technology to personalize learning. In a simple term, actually, anywhere, anytime. It is something that where we are all in, we are all anywhere. We are all also, our use of time is also there. So part of the learning that we shall try to discover today is what can we learn from where we are? What can we learn from where we are? And in a time of COVID, it's actually very, very opportune to discuss this as well. Kasi nga, the reality is, not most of us do have the luxury of having the internet connection, the learning management system. So what could this place-based education try to teach us in terms of learning? Leverage means, of course, it's an advantage for accomplishing something. So it gives us an advantage. That is very, very nice. It gives us an advantage accomplishing what a purpose. We accomplish a purpose because of where we are, because of how and where we get our knowledge from. And sabi nga rin dito, in 1858 pa kasi yung leverage na word, it gives us actually, it enhances. We learn something, we gain something from it. Next slide, please. And in this sense, what we will try to discover, these are the, we could say, these are the things that is the topics for today. I will be discussing, first of all, in place-based learning, that is the first topic, which includes the time and space, experience, adaptation, which is very crucial, storytelling, narratives, and then place-based learning would always be actually learner-centered. A while ago when Dr. Pilar was speaking, she was speaking about human-centeredness, facilitating the human-centeredness. Place-based education to be related to that one too. That is actually learner-centered. It is actually learner-centered, and that is something that we could actually aspire to. Second thing that will be discussed today, we hope to discuss, is in Philippine Catholic education. And here, our experience, most of this we know already. Philippine public and private, the basic ed, the K-12, the higher educational institutes, deped and CHED, CEAP and others. Tapos, of course, more importantly, yung Catholic ethos, the Catholic ethos that was there. And then afterwards, we'll also go to communicating and mapping. The principles kasi that I have always, from my experience in teaching, not only here but also overseas, is simply this, that every learning is actually communication. That there could be no education without communication. We cannot educate without actually communicating, either verbal or non-verbal, in many, many, many different ways. So education will always be linked to actually communication. If we could link it, kanina, Dr. Pilar has mentioned really something that's very significant in terms of dialogue and relationship. And that is actually the product also of communication, that relationship that is created. So education, place-based learning is all about communicating. Communicating necessarily ideas, but communicating actually experience. And that's where the dialogue actually happens as well. So in terms of communicating and tapping, we will discuss a little on process and stages of communication, verbal, non-verbal. Tapos more importantly, yung signs, which is very important in place-based learning. Yung meaning of the things that are around you. meaning of the things that happens, and meaning of the things that are there to support what you actually know. And lastly, we will speak about learning management systems in terms of instruments and the media for learning. The LMS that we use, Zoom is one of them that we're using now. Facebook, we could say, is one of them. The emails and all that. Those are actually instruments for learning. They are not the learning knowledge itself. They are actually instruments. And then managing actually those tools for us, then it's a system as our organization and the structures. Yung mga Zoom kasi, and then also even Schoology, even Canvas, even Edmodo, even Google Classroom, they follow actually a structure. At the end of it all, it highlights, as what has been highlighted, I believe, strongly by Dr. Pilar kanina a while ago, was that the person will always be at the center. So, in place-based learning, the person is actually the best communication tool. And at the end of it all, is the conclusion that the person actually is the best learning management system, both as a teacher and both as a student, and both as a student. So that is actually what this talk and this session is all about, learning what it is really. Okay, number one, place-based learning. So in each of the texts, I have put a little question to ask. What is place-based learning? Can it also be done in schools, which is also a place? There, parang very philosophical. It seems like it's very philosophical question. Pero the truth is actually, it can be. It can be. Because it's also a place. Pero what does it mean really, place-based education? Place refers, of course, for now, it's a space, a dimension. It's an extent, a room area. It's actually a position where you are now. You are now listening to me. You are in your office, in your rooms, or in your clubs or whatever, but it's something that you occupy. A place is time and space. So the place you occupy, and where and when something happens. In that place always, there is something that happens. School is a place wherein the manner of learning is actually facilitated. School is one place wherein learning is facilitated. But it is not the only place where learning begins. Sabi nga nila, the family and the home is the first place where education begins. The place base serves as actually the foundation of it all, the foundation of it all. So you might have many questions already in terms of what is this that we are trying to teach. So I wrote here some of the guiding principles and actually questions. When did place-based learning start, and what are its advantages and disadvantages? What's the difference between home education and place-based education? What happens to the government-mandated curricula in a PBE setting? To which areas of learning can PBE be applied? And number 5, how can PBE be successfully be implemented, and what are its requirements? Medyo the assumptions that I would like to put forward is this. In terms of the first question, when did it start? Actually, since the beginning of time. Since the beginning of time, which means for me, since every living creature began to communicate, there is already actually a place-based learning that happens. Aware of the things that are around you, that is actually the beginning of place-based education already. It is therefore, we could say, an outcomes-based learning, even in the times past, mga ancient times pa pala. As long as people communicate on earth, there is some learning actually that happens there. There is a transmission of things that are learned. And then it merges, what is it? Positive thing, it merges conventional and current learning tool. It doesn't take away the other, nor does it eliminate the other. It actually merges and complements what is actually there. The things that we learn in school is actually something that is unique. The things that we will learn actually in place or home at this stage because of COVID is something that actually we can learn from too. And the two combined can give us a very, very good outcome. Later on, we'll actually distinguish them. In terms of positive thing, advantages, in terms of availability of resources, needed to complete actually some of the to complete the modules. And then, siguro, some of the disadvantages, it will always have, since it is person-centered, individual student-centered, or individual experience-centered, it will always be based on subjective assessment. And it requires actually, hindi naman you have to reteach the teachers, pero actually, you have to add something, realign what the teachers would be teaching in school to that when you have a place-based education. Now, the difference between home education and place-based education, we could say HE, home education, deliver and execute at home a required syllabus or module. There are many like this actually in Australia too. Although when you went to Australia, some of my classmates in the PhD before went to Australia, they actually saw schools, but that they are not the home education, but there are many persons actually or families in Australia, Filipino families too, who does actually home education for their children. The materials come from, actually they come from America normally, and they do that. They deliver the required syllabus, they follow, they submit, they are graded. So that's home-based. Place-based is actually you tap the elements of place to become part of the learning for the syllabus or modules completion. You see what is there at home, and then you use it as part of the assessments rather than the generic assessments given to you. With the end of having a learning outcome that is similar to the one given at school. What happens in the government mandated curricula in TDE, I will always say that it is actually, it actually all remains. They are completed and they are actually fulfilled. I think it is very much important to know as well. Well, I'm teaching now also teaching now some of the senior high schools. Mga learning competencies nila, what describe how communication is affected by media and information. All of that actually are actually fulfilled by place-based education to all those things. So the required government inputs and outcomes are completed with greater participation, creativity, and productivity from the learners. Kasi nga, it's place-based, therefore student-centered, cognitive-based din ito. It's not necessarily what they learn that happens in place-based education, but what they learn tell them. Yan. Tell about themselves. Yan. Afterwards, number 4, which areas of place-based education can it be applied? Can TB be applied? Actually, to all the areas of learning. Kasi we have the syllabus, assessments, learning outcomes that are there too. So it can be applied to school culture, professional development, leadership, curriculum instruction, and also assessment, and then family, and also community. How can it be successfully implemented? As I mentioned at the beginning, the teachers have to do a bit of formation in how shifting, I didn't want to shifting, adding, I would have enhancing really what the students are capable of to individual, sabi natin, cognitive outcomes or learning outcomes for them. And then, of course, very, very important is that we have to have an inventory of place. That is actually very, very important. An inventory of place that the teachers will have actually. It's actually interesting how here even, as I mentioned before, place-based learning is not actually only just now or like in the year 2000 happens. It actually goes beyond from the time that the student or the child actually begins actually to learn. And part of those elements actually are described, next slide please, are described by John Dewey. Of course, this is a book that he has mentioned, the 4 instincts of learning. This is actually, as I told you, place-based learning is not only like a recent. It's actually, this book, School and Society, was written by John Dewey in 1902 still. Imagine, 1902. So what does he say in terms of learning? That is actually the 4 instincts of learning that all people have. beginning with the childhood and all that. It starts with the childhood. We all have, number one, social instinct. These are actually basics for place-based instinct. The place-based education, the realization that each person is actually a social being. We have the language instinct, we communicate, we actually talk, conversation, and as Dr. Pilar has mentioned, relationships. We actually relate. And it is actually in that we actually communicate. As has been mentioned also before by Charles Darwin, human beings only exist because of two S. All living creatures, hindi pala human beings lang, but all living creatures only exist because of two things. Number one is actually survival, the need to eat, to be nourished. And then the second one is this social instinct, the need to socialize. Every living being does happen to yan. Even the mosquitoes who bite you at night or in the dark, they actually have that instinct of survival. And then social instinct actually comes in there. Each of us too, even the trees around, they wanted to reach sunlight, but it's part of our nature to be social. Afterwards, after recognizing that we can communicate, afterwards that we are actually part of the social network of beings, it's our instinct to make, to invent something. To invent something. If you're a little child, you actually draw mga pencils, or else you have little cubes like the Lego type, you construct, you build. Part of that is part of our instinct too. We don't just talk and talk. We like actually to build something. Parang ito yung creative dreaming that each of the young persons also have. Pero we have the instinct to make, to be social, to make, and then also the instinct of investigation. We actually have the instinct of investigation. And in this one, is something that we find out, we explore, tsaka yung research. Yung mga child, if you give a child something, ano yung gagawin talaga ng child na normally? What is their instinct? If I give the child, for example, if I give a child this mouse, if I give them this mouse, ano yung gagawin ng child dito? Either the child, ang kanyang investigation, siguro laruan ito throw niya siya. Or else, the child would what? The child would what? The child actually would bite this. For us as adults, our investigation instinct, we know already what this is, and that is part of it. Pero part of the learning, place-based, is actually yung investigation. Then the other one, of course, is the artistic instinct that we all of us have. Hindi naman yung mga maarte, not that they are maarte, pero that they are actually, that instinct that we have, it's actually performative. And dito yung maganda, when I was teaching my apo, yung song ba na, that song that we all know, beep, beep, the small jeep.
So before we start the day 4 talk,
running down the street.
In-stream lang natin yung
version. And then he
talk yesterday.
Then she said, stop, look, and this, and stop, look, and this, and then after that song, it's only 3 years. Now that song, I told her, can you act this out in the song? And then,
so yun yung talk kahapon. So mamaya 9:40
magsisimula
magsisimula yung talk about.
And then he told me, no, that is not actually correct. That is not correct. It's not
lang tayo.
There is a beep, beep. So I should do like this. Beep, beep, small jeep is running down the street. Now, stop, look, and listen. Stop, look, and listen. Ang galing, that's the artistic. And each of us actually could cater to it. And each of us actually could cater to it. Each of us have that experience. Pero that it is part of that. We are social. We make, we investigate. We are actually artistic. And I believe place-based learning is actually all this. You become social with each of your surroundings. You become friendly with each of your surroundings. You actually make things. You investigate. You ask questions. And then you are artistic. Imaginatively, you will produce a result from one given thing. So that is the one to. Also here, we could say, that in discussing this as well, there is the idea, ito na yung talaga, these are the place-based instinct really of what was suggested, the place-based learning, the key benefits. Ano yun? Learning is grounded in local communities and context where you are talaga, not only in the home. Now in COVID time, it's actually the home, but it's not only that, okay? It's the local, grounded ka doon. Learning experience, student-centered and personalized. We know that one already. Learning is always relevant and engaging. Like my apo, when I told her, can you act it out? And she did. It's actually engaging. Then there's the social emotional learning that can be actually a priority too. The social thing, you began to relate with the others. Instruction can be in this interdisciplinary, not only notes, computer can be used, okay? And then lessons can be actually inquiry-based. Why is it like this? Why is it like that? Then students actually can be challenged to see the world through an ecological, political, economic, and social lens. Tama to. One with the creation environment, like what Pope Francis would normally say. Then the students can have an agency or autonomy. Actually, this one is the most important one. Artistic. They can have actually the freedom not to do what they like, but to express what was told to them and what it does to them. Ibang learning yun eh. And then can also be called a design thinking. It encourages it. The student can meet deeper learning outcomes to improve. And the students can gain better appreciation and understanding of the world around them. Yun talaga. You are not based only in a room. You are based actually around. You are based actually around. And I think that is something that is important. So in terms of design principles, later on we will talk much on this one. It's actually local. The one you discover is one you would use globally. The one you discover now is one you can use globally. If I could relate it to Dr. Pillars, globalization of hope, that is actually the hope that we have here, for example, that we express as Filipinos, it can be globalized, and that the experience here at home can actually be globalized. Kaya kanina, I was asking the question kanina rin on how ano yung pwedeng benchmark sana in Philippine education for overseas schools actually. Because what we normally do before is benchmark in other countries, what we can learn in terms of education. Siguro from like question, like globalization of hope, how is it expressed distinctly in the Philippines? Parang ganon, that's a place-based education. Learner-centered, inquiry-based, as we have said. Design thinking will always do that. Imaginatively express an output. Community, the whole community, everything around you, even your home becomes actually your classroom. And then it is interdisciplinary. Here comes, as I've said, it's not actually taking away. It is not taking away the other learning management system. It's actually complementing it so as to produce a more personalized outcome for you. A more personalized outcome for you, which you could actually use. And in terms of this, at once, I would like to share this. When I was thinking of this, then I thought really of what we did even in PhD natin, the PhD that we did with our classmates. The basics talaga yung of Catholic education and educational system. What are there in terms of this? And this one, I thought to myself, okay, I try to do a little table in terms of this, on how it can be represented. And what I came up with, so pedagogical areas, then the CBE. CBE means like the campus-based or school-based education, and then the place-based education. How do they complement each other? Yan lang naman talaga yung ano ko dito. As I've said, CBE, I am not putting them in opposition to the other. What we are trying to do is actually how to complement them to have a better or else a more personalized outcome for each student. In terms of instruction, CBE mainly, for example, objective-based exams will always be about memorization. It's a way of knowing. Sa place-based education naman, it's actually a lived awareness. It's actually a way of living. And I believe here, when I was teaching, some PhD students naman, the Chinese. When I was teaching the Chinese, I was greatly impressed because I was teaching them philosophy of education. But what happened was, I was telling them, okay, can you tell me about the philosophy, uh, your own philosophy in the country that you're in China, for example. And they submitted their assessments. And the way they submitted at once is, even in terms of their philosophy, Confucianism, Sina Lao Tzu, Menchu, yeah. The Chinese one, the Chinese philosophy is always, in terms of instruction, it's actually a way of living. How they apply what they know. How they apply what they know. Very, very interesting for me. Kasi nga, even in a country like Australia, Italy, Spain, England, education is about instruction. It's all about way of knowing. Knowledge-centered. Yung isa naman, it's life-centered, a way of living. Okay, in terms of, dito naman, in terms of assessment, what does it do? It's actually, it can be, the assessment is replicable. I can duplicate the assessment in campus-based. Okay, number one is true, for example, false, true, false. I could actually differentiate it at once, and I could imitate it. This is not all for number one. But in terms of PBE, it's actually applicability that is applied. In terms of assessment, it's applicability. And then in terms of curriculum, it's actually the conventional. Actually, in saying this, actually, I would say, kasi nga, communication is all about history of how people communicate. So, like in years' time, what we have today as like modern instruments, what we use today as learning management systems, in the future will actually be called conventional. So talagang it's not the instruments that would make it like modern, or should we talk of something that is modern. So the best way that I could see that it is in relation to communication and education, PBE, is actually we in terms of the curriculum, it's the new normal. We go back to what our surroundings can tell us about what we are trying to learn. We go back to what our surroundings are telling us regarding what we are trying to learn. It becomes going back to the roots and relearning them, relearning the roots, It's actually that is the new normal. Because the idea is really what we have today. Every modern instrument, even my cell phone today, this one, although it's like modern, sabi natin, even the computer that you use now will actually be conventional in the near future. So what will never change, that is always there, sabi natin, is actually the world around us. This computer that I have now, this one, in time, malalaos na to, mawawala. It will not have any battery anymore. It will be superseded. Ano na to? It will be forgotten. New models will appear already. So not the Samsung, this model. So the new normal allows us to actually relook at what is around us and learn from it in terms of what it can offer. Because it offers us possibilities beyond, actually, over and beyond what this one can give in terms of learning, in terms of instruments of learning. This one teaches us, actually, principles, knowledge. Like the trees around me now, what does it teach me? Principles? No. It teaches me actually life. It teaches me life and how I could apply even my own life to it, how I could pattern. In terms of leadership, what is it? Therefore, we could say that it is actually leadership organizational, and then cellular, we could say. Learning management system, I could say it's external because it's really outside of me, this one. Internal, this is digital and technical. Then the other one is socio-anthropological. Yan siya. And then in terms of resources, this is instruction centered. The other one is learner centered, structured. structured and future. Then the research is empirical, global. It's actually exploratory. You explore things outside of you. You explore things it's outside of you. Tapos, in terms of professional development, you focus on the challenges around you. You know, place-based, more often than not, they focus more on opportunities. What can this thing still teach me about what I am facing now? What is the thing around me? In terms of objectives, it's actually translation. Uh, but in TBE, it's actually transformation. Why is it just a translation? Because it's a translation only of what was given. I just give it to you what is written here. Whereas transformation is what is written here can transform me in my life. Yun talaga yun. What is written here can have an effect on my life. In terms of outcomes, it's actually empowering. Talaga yan. CBE campus, you are all told to empower. It's written in many of the mission statements also. And then, but in TBE, it actually is supposed to inspire. It's actually supposed to inspire. It's supposed to inspire. So this one, I have explained it very quickly, pero talagang may mga more, I have some modules after explaining each of these that is actually better. But because of time, we will actually not discuss this one already. This is like the initial steps. Place-based learning na. Preliminary process actually is on form. That's input that you get even from the mandated and required curriculum. Then, in terms of this, you discuss it with the professors. They begin to be involved. This is where it really starts. They begin to be involved. They ask questions. They investigate. Afterwards, they collaborate, and then they actually empower. They are actually empowered already. For most of us, empowering is the last word. Empowering is the last word. But for place-based education, it's actually not yet the last word. I empower, therefore what? I can do things. Pero the other one that I have mentioned before, I believe the last word is that it should actually inspire. And here is where I like to link the talk of Dr. Pilar. It actually gives you hope. Yan. It actually gives you hope. That is an inspiration. Hope. One of our priests in Italy has always said, La speranza è l'ultima cosa di morire. Hope is the last thing to die in a person. Hope is the last thing that should die in a person. Very, very nice. So this image that actually use, the image that I actually use, this one, when you go back please to the last one, the last slide please. The last one, this empowerment actually. What I have encouraged most of my students, especially the graduate students, the teachers, like after empowering, what would be the drawing next to this, which would be here? What would be the drawing? So this is not the last word. It's just a preliminary process. So what could be? What could be the drawing after this? How would we represent it, and how would you call it? Most of the students would draw many different things. But the summary was the different things that they have drawn on a piece of paper, how it would be represented. It's actually one that points to inspiration, hope, and all that. Those are the things. Next slide, please. Okay, then this one is actually also one of the sayings that I have always liked with placing. Ito kasi yan. We learn. How do we learn? Why do we learn it? And where do we learn it? Place is always a place where we are from. It's where we are going. That one is very nice. So it's not just centered on the now. It's actually where we are going, the future. It comes in layers. It's old and it's new. Place is central to human development. It is how we apprehend the world. How we understand the world is actually how the world works. How we understand the world should be how should we understand the world? We should understand the world in how it works. If the clouds are cloudy, there are thick clouds, it will actually rain, or dark clouds, it will rain. Yeah, the sun is out, therefore it is morning. The sun is not out, it's evening. Although in Australia, sometimes even though the sun is still up, 10 p.m., the sun is still up some in Melbourne. And then it asks for our attention and our care. To pay attention, place has much to teach us. And this is actually what is we could actually do place-based attention. Pay much attention. And which is actually the like even teachers of place-based education should actually learn paying attention, paying much attention. Next slide, please. Now we are going to Philippine Catholic education. You have discussed many of these a while ago already, so I will not discuss this. The question that I placed here is, what is most distinctive about Catholic education in the Philippines? We are people of hope, and I did my studies in Italy before theology. The professor at once told me, "Where are you from?" Then I said, "The Philippines." Then he at once told me, "Okay, the Philippines, that's actually 92% Catholic." And I was very happy actually. He affirmed and he knew what was the characteristic of Philippines. That is actually 92% Catholics. But then as I realized afterwards, even when I came back to the Philippines, okay, we are 92% Catholics. But what has it done to our life, to our system, even to our government, our educational system? Our educational system, there's no question, we try to uphold it. But even in our homes, we are 92% Catholics before. Like what has it done in our life? How have we lived it in our homes? How have we lived it in our homes? And here, next slide, please. Hello, there. So the next slide says this is just from Gravissimum. Education is a universal right. In Christian education, which is achieved. Parents are the primary authors, education, so the parents. Then the schools are designed not only to develop the special care of intellectual faculties, but also to form the ability to judge rightly. So it's not only to teach you something that is external of you, but to help that external to help you discover the inside of you that could be beneficial to what is external. I hope that is actually clear. So what is put in you, the way you say that you could, the outcome is that what is put inside of you in terms of learning, you could actually apply in your own life so that you could contribute to what is outside afterwards. Foster a sense of values, prepare. To attain this, coordination and cooperation is actually necessary. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide actually refers to one of the, so this one was one of our great findings when we were doing before our thesis, dissertation. The key characteristics of Catholic school by Cardinal Miller. In terms of the one on the middle, you see Mentipac, Artifact, and Sociopac, which is actually the Catholic culture characteristics. Cardinal Miller applied sustained by gospel witness, inspired by the supernatural, founded in Christian anthropology, animated by communion. A while ago, Dr. Pilar mentioned that one too, and community and a Catholic worldview. So all of this, Cardinal Miller in 2006 identified after Cardinal Miller was before as well with the Pontifical Commission on Catholic Education in Rome. So he was the one who formulated these 5 principles of Catholic education. So how do we embed it? I guess given that DCSS has actually mentioned to us something of this. Pero ito lang, yung alignment of it. The ones that you see in color are actually the ones of Cardinal Miller. The ones in black are actually, these words are actually from, these are from the survey. So this is live. This is actually from the survey of Philippine schools that I have done in terms of my dissertation really. How do they define communion, supernatural vision, Catholic curriculum, Christian anthropology, and gospel witness? Okay, what words do they associate with communion? Do respect, Christian identity? Ang ganda eh. These are actually the black ones are actually what is the distinctive about Philippine Catholic education are actually the words actually in black. These are actually coming from students, teachers, and parents and administrators. So this, we could say, in general terms, this is Catholic education, characteristics of Catholic education in the Philippines. And these are schools around the Philippines, in the major regions of the Philippines. It's just interesting how they actually fit in as well. Justice, Christianopology, gospel, and it is actually nice to see it. And admittedly, what is also nice is actually in terms of the vision and mission. At yun, for the students and for the teachers, in terms of alignment, even here, most of our, for example, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Can you return? Sorry, can you return to the other slide? Okay. So these other slides that you have seen are actually, as I mentioned, the colored ones are actually the ones that are cardinal leaders. Okay. So what I did here is actually put the words here, the parents, students, and administrators and faculty regarding Catholic education, regarding the different areas of Catholic education. So at least that one is, as I mentioned, distinctive. And how can they be actually distinctive? Next slide, please. Here is where I believe the alignment is very, very important. The vision mission of the school. And then this one teacher has said, my personal vision and mission should not be away from the school, from what the school wants. So there's actually an application. And this I have asked always when I give retreats and talks to the teachers. So how much of your vision, mission, of statement of the school can you really take home that you can practice at home? How much of the vision, mission of your school can you actually take home that you can actually share to your families? I don't know if ever some of you have done it already, but I think that is what you can call mission in continuity. It is something that you do in continuity. Therefore, this teacher was saying, if this be true, and I would ask now the teachers now in front of us, even the administrators and faculties, if you go back to your mission statement again, okay, does my mission statement as a Catholic school remain only on the four corners of my school, or have I brought it home already? And ito yung magandang challenge. That is the nice challenge that I placed always the teacher before, even mga admin, and even the superintendents before I asked them, how much of this have you taken actually home? How much of this have you shared to your family? Siguro it would be something that is nice in terms of Catholic education, that our vision and mission statements remain not only in our walls, but actually we put in our hearts and actually take it home. And one of the assessments that I gave to my class noon in terms of vision and mission for the teachers and admin was, sige, find time tonight to share to your family during dinner your vision and mission. Just ask them what they think of it. Ganda, you know? And afterwards, the result was talaga, some of them really, oh, Father, this is only the first time that we did that. We never knew that it can actually be effective like that too. So the first challenge actually of place-based is not actually bringing home modules or curriculum. Actually, for me, the first challenge of first place-based education is actually to bring home actually your vision and mission statements. Nakalagay doon minsan is empowering, academic excellence, very good. How do you therefore translate it at home? How do you translate it at home? It will always be nice to have a sense of that. How is my vision and mission? How do I take it at home? Kung talaga namang after school, it's just there inside the gates of the school. I have not brought it home with me. Kasi there are already other things to do at home. But if the vision mission is correct, if your teacher is correct, it should actually be supposed to be a personal vision and mission too. Next slide, please. Okay, in terms of students, of course, sabi naman niya, I have great respect for the teachers because I believe they have a big impact on my development. See? They have a big impact on my, and I believe many of you would have that one. That's actually part. Big impact, which means it has an effect on them, not only in school, but also in the home. Then we are often reminded that grades are not the sole important things, but character formation. Yan, this is actually part of the focus group discussion that we have with the students. Character formation in a Catholic school is part of actually the humanism that Dr. Pilar is actually speaking of. And then we are supposed, sabi dito, to align our personal beliefs with the school as well. And what's the effect of that? Next slide, please. This is just to describe. This is actually the world that we live in. This is the world that we live in. This is the world that we live in that each of us would have. Of course, the green one are the Islam. The blue ones is actually the Catholics. The violet ones, the purple ones, the Catholic, Orthodox, ganyan. The yellow and the orange one are the Chinese religion, Hinduism, and the others. So you will just see, this is like the mission of the Catholic Church. It's actually in a mission of different religions. But this is part of also our place. This is part of our place. And this is part of something that it has something to teach us regarding our beliefs, regarding our fraternal humanism, we could say as well. Next slide, please. Ito naman, just to have a passing, part of what is Catholic, how is Catholic perceived actually. In Luzon, sorry, wrong spelling, that I did that. This is actually from the region 1. Cannot read it much. This is from region NCR, region 1, region 3, region 4, region 5. How do they see Catholic? These are the words of parents and yung mga similar words, the great words. Interesting, in Luzon, they actually have 5 descriptions na parang similar ang karamihan. It's actually religion, Christ-centered, faith, God, and actually Christian. That is in Luzon. What I found out, different regions naman to, region of the Visayas, they are decreased already in 3 words. Religion, Christ-centered, and faith. Next slide, please. Yan. And then, yan. In the Visayas, religion, Christ-centered, and faith, I did not actually make this. This is for the from the students, the teachers, how best they would describe. In Mindanao, it's interesting too. How would they see Catholic? The word Catholic in Mindanao, they would describe it only as yung major niya talaga, central. It's actually a religion only. So even there, you would see something that is actually most important. And this is what the school does to us. This is what the school does to us. And here I could say, in terms of our belief, in terms of education, where does Catholic education end? Ano nga ba yung kanyang end? And here I believe is where this book of Neil Postman is very interesting. It's not actually Catholic. But anyway, we could read together. The God I refer to is the name of a great narrative, one that has sufficient credibility, complexity, and symbolic power, so that it is possible to organize one's life and one's learning around it. Without such a transcendent narrative, life has no meaning. Without meaning, life has no purpose. And without purpose, schools become houses of detention and not attention. So I would ask Cyrus if you could play that little video, please. I don't know if you can hear.
None. School is pointless.
I hope you can hear it.
Nietzsche's famous remark is relevant here. He said once, he who has a why to live can bear with almost any how. And this applies, I think, as much to learning as to living. To put it, as I said it before, there is no surer way to bring an end to schooling than for it to have no end. A God, in the sense I'm using the word, is the name of a great narrative, one that has sufficient credibility.
Okay, Cyrus, can you just
complexity,
stop
and
it?
symbolic
Because
power,
there is really no sound,
so that it's
we should not
possible
consume
to
time.
organize.
Okay, ayan, there, okay. Hindi, ito na lang. Sige, yung last na lang, yung 4 minutes. Okay. It's not actually working on your mind. Anyway, sige, i-cut mo na muna. Serious,
complexity and
serious, you can cut it already. Return
so
to the
that it's
slides,
possible
please.
to organize.
Hello, Cyrus. Uh-oh. Hi, it's on. It's not on my end yet. Okay. Ayan, very good. Very good. Okay. So anyway, as we have heard, you did not watch that video, pero Neil Postman was describing something about, yun nga, ito, yung, the one that is written before. Without the narrative of God in our life, the narrative, our own life has no meaning. Without meaning, life has no purpose. And without purpose, schools become houses of detention and not attention. And I believe that is a very, very strong point too regarding our schools. What we teach in our schools, in terms of faith, in terms of learning, are they with a purpose? And the purpose you have if you actually are able to apply the vision and mission of the school. That is when you attain the purpose. If your curriculum does not stick to arrive at achieving yung parang vision and mission, therefore your schools actually become houses of detention lang. And just knowledge lang, but not learning, not attention, really, because it cannot be applied. Okay, now I will go to that slide that you have here now in your screen. And that is, education is communication. And then the question that I put there is this, simply this. Can you educate without communication? Or can you communicate without education? It's interesting. I asked before our register here, can you educate without education? And sabi niya, no, Father. And then I asked her, can you communicate without educating? And then she said, yes, Father, and it happens often that you communicate but without educating. So here is the premise that where I believe that communication is actually very much linked to education and communication. Next slide, please. Education, okay, basic definition is to nourish. Educare and educere. Educere at educare is to raise up, to bring forth, to draw out, to lead, means the act of teaching and also training. What is communication? The transmission of ideas. Therefore, to raise it up, emotions from one person or another. When you nourish, you transmit something, you bring up something, you raise up something with the aid of extension or tools that is rooted in our ability and need to survive as well as to socialize. That is from Charles Darwin, 1872. Now, what is the common point in both of them? It's actually the human person. The human person, even according to Dr. Pilar, is very central actually to our education. The human person. And the human person in communication is actually very, very important. The best instrument of communication is still the human person. According to Dr. Pilar, the best way of education too is also through the human person, the subjects, the teachers, and the students. And again, with this quote, communication and the instrument it employs are integral part of the human person. Each person is a communicator. Inherent in each one is also the need to communicate. Now, this is a bit technical, but it's actually very, very important in place-based learning. Communication is seen always in two terms, as in process and as a semiotics. Maganda doon. It's always linear. The process is always linear. Sees communication as a process and centers on the stages of transmission from the sender, masasabi natin, the medium, and the receiver, and the destination. So that is the basic. You know that. There's the stages. Most of the time, our CBE, campus-based, is actually communicating as a process. Communicating as process. What is communicated? What is communicated? Parang like this is the syllabus of media and literacy. Ayan, from the school and from deped. Yun ay syllabus. It's actually a process. You should teach the content. You should teach the content standard what is the performance standard, learning competencies, and what is the code. It's actually a process style. It's a linear. The student to pass should be 1, 2, 3, 4. Should actually do all the process. Interestingly, there is also one communication which is asemiotic communication, or it depends on the sign. Communication as the creation and exchange of meanings. It is a structural approach. So structure, 1, 2, 3. Hindi siya structure na ongoing, pero structure that it is, pyramid style. Approach that focuses on the relationship, popular word, the relationship between the constituent element necessary to obtain meaning. So in terms of communication as science is you obtain meaning, you obtain significance. Here in this concept, sige, nandiyan yung sign, nandiyan yung object, ano yung concept? Ano yung andiyan yung sign, what is the sign, what is the object, and then what is the concept. I was telling my students before, okay, this is a pen. Okay, this is a pen. What is actually the sign of this? The sign of this, of course, is E-E-N, pen. That's the sign, E-E-N. What is the object? Is pen. Ito pen na to. And what is the concept of this? Writing. That is actually writing. That is what it, when I show you this, so students, it's actually about, they would not think, that's a pen. When I give you this, what will you do with this? You will not tell me, oh, that is a pen. That is P-E-N. No? What will you do? A concept. You will actually write with it. Alam na natin. So that at once, that is actually the learning that we have already done because we know already the sign, P-E-N, we know the object and the concept. And dito, as signs, of course, we have different meanings for different things. And as teachers, we use this. Ito naman. Here, go to the mouse. Again, we go back to the mouse. Sige, go back na lang tayo dito sa pen. We go back to the pen. Okay, sige, ito. As adults, this one for us is P-E-N. Pero a child, like a baby, if you give this to them, what will the baby do? Sabi na natin kanina, the baby will actually only either throw it away or put it in the mouth. So yung concept ng writing wala sa kanya. So in terms of science, there are many different meanings to this. Hindi lang isa, depending on the culture, depending on the person. Place-based education might seem tedious, might seem parang ang hirap in terms of communication kasi parang ang daming meaning na makukuha. Pero what is nice about it is that it adapts to the person. It adapts to the person. Kung ano yung paningin mo dito, that is actually how I think of it. I might, tumanda na, if they grow old already, the children, then they will have a different perception of this. And that is actually, place-based learning is a multiplicity of meanings. There is a multiplicity of meanings, but what it does actually is to individualize learning, not to compartmentalize learning. That is what place-based learning does in terms of communication. It individualizes the learner, how he perceives what is in front of him, what was said of him, how he actually acts on it. It doesn't compartmentalize. Okay, next slide is actually this one already that is there. As you can see, place-based learning relies more on discovery and exploration of meaning, interpretation and significance that goes beyond what is physically evident. This is actually, when I give this to you, you do not say, it is white. It is actually long. No, what you go for in place-based learning is you write at once. Kasi our age. Then it is more concerned not with arriving at a correct and exact answer, but of asking the right question in order to obtain the most meaningful response to the person. Now, we were discussing this with Christine before, yung ating moderator now. Sabi ko ng the correct, getting the right answer. But place-based learning is more not on getting the right answer, but asking the right questions. As such, it can be characterized as following more the communication of signs. Ito nga, it asks not. Look at the drawings on the bottom. How many pencils are here and what colors? This is externally evident. Place-based learning is this. Why was this picture used here and what it means for me? Significance of presence. This is what place-based learning does. It doesn't actually concentrate on really what you see only, but why is it there? The significance of that and what it means for me. What it means for me. Kaya it has always something to teach us, we could say. At ito na yun dito. In terms of this, learning, we could say attains its significance, a text attains its significance only when it is read. Sabi yan ni Walter Ong. Talaga namang, if you have a book and you do not read the book, therefore that book is actually insignificant. Kasi you have not read it naman. How can it be significant to you? So in the same way, we can formulate that learning attains its significance only when it is actually lived, when communicated in our life. Next hit, please. Thank you. Learning attains its significance only when it is lived, when you can apply it in your life. I can apply this in my life as an adult. I write in it. I write with it. And then when it is actually communicated in life. Next slide, please. Okay, number 4, place-based learning. We are ready to end to place-based learning management system and effective and alternative. Now, next slide, please. No, wait. Wait. Can you go back, please? You should read the question. Am I using this technology or is it using me? This one is part of the interview. Again, Neil Postman is a great media scholar and educator too. Pero he asked this question, am I using this technology or is it really using me? Our current learning management system, are we using it really or is it using us? Are our students using it tapos for the whole day or is it using them? Or is it using them? That is actually a good question in terms of the learning management systems. Next slide, please. Okay. And then the next slide would tell us, the next slide, place can be drawn upon any subject. This approach can also encourage educators to look beyond language and methods of their own fields to explore problems and projects that open the possibility of cross-disciplinary dialogue, interdisciplinary dialogue. Any subject. This is written by C.O.N.G.R.E.S S, 2010. That in everything he said, he believes, and I believe it is true, that everything around us can teach us about everything. That everything around us can teach us about everything. Everything around us can teach us about how we actually behave. Later on, I will give a much clearer example for that. This one too is like the conversation, the communication, the dialogue is here, happens. Next slide, please. The dialogue happens in the present. Andiyan na yan lahat. Oh, this is the communication, conversation. When in traditional media, the medium is the message, Makluhan, 1964. In digital communication, the medium is really who we are, our paradigms of perception and interaction, which tends to undergo modification so as to adapt to the new medium. Rovetorni is actually a good Italian writer in terms of web psychology. Sabi niya talaga, medium is the message before, Makluhan, but nowadays, the medium can actually become who we are. It tells us our learning management, our learning in COVID times. What does our learning management system in COVID times describes actually who we are, our paradigms of perception and interaction. Most of the times it does. Zoom describes us. Ito, ngayon, it describes us. We are actually modern. Okay? We are modern. And that is actually very, very good. We are modern. Our paradigms of perceptions like this, images. And actually, it is actually very, very nice. Pero yung paradigm of perceptions natin would be like this, paradigms of perception. Next slide, please. Next. Hit mo na yung lahat. Yes, please. Yes, yes. Another one. Thank you very much. So in the next one, you would see this is my historical communication wheel. Communication has always been information, communication, mind, heart, and will. Catholic yan, versions. John 14:6. And then social relationships. The mind, the heart. Sabi natin, most of our LMS system is actually in the information and communication side. It's our mind and our will that it trains. It's our mind and our will that it trains. Pero the use of learning management systems actually requires a third portion, which is social relationships. What relationships does our use of learning management system create? Or is it only oftentimes instant ice training and all that? Yun din, we have to rethink. Is our learning management system currently allows for these three: information, communication, and social relationships? Does it create it? Does it allow it? Does it allow it? Much of the internet communication today focuses on information giving and communication exchange. It falls short on the creation of social relationships. COVID nga, syempre wala rin talaga. Catholic schools' social media use ought to focus more on upholding the development of social relationships rather than only the media. When I was in Italy talaga doing that study before, the distinction, what is social media and what's supposed to be a disadvantage social media, we tend to focus more on the media rather than on the social. Not doing so reduces our social media use or consumption. Pagka media lang, if our learning management system is really concentrated only on using it, that's actually consumption. It does not lead rather to conversion or transformation. How do they apply what they have actually seen today in Zoom or in other learning management system? Yun pa rin. Can they talk more to their parents now? Is their parents talking to them to guide them? Yung ganun ba? And then communication, of course, the key to communication is information, communication, and also relationship. Next slide, please. And this one is also very nice in terms of this. Ivan Illich is an Austrian, but it's very good. He said, the degree with which you master your tools, you can invest the world with your meaning. The degree with which you are mastered by your tools, the shape of the tools determine your own self-image. And in many ways, oftentimes, sana our learning management systems that we currently use do not fall on this. But it determines our own self-image of learning. What place-based learning does is actually to give you an opportunity to discover other meanings and alternative meanings in a way that is theirs. And yun nga. But do not get me wrong, please. I am a graduate of social communication. I do not hate computers or technology. Actually, I love them. But I always believe that I should love more the best instrument of communication, which is actually the person, to utilize more the person as an instrument of communication or as a method of learning and the one it can teach us. Yun talaga, I would actually come into that. Next slide, please. So, anyway, what does it tell us now in terms of place-based learning? How do you implement it? Postlude, distinct from the normal LMS, rooted in technology. It is actually distinct because in place-based learning, even without technology, it can survive in terms of assessments. It can actually be done because you will be fulfilling, there is a learning outcome even without that. Pero, as I've said, it is distinct, but it doesn't replace it, okay? It doesn't eliminate it. It complements. The teacher and the student are the best learning management systems and communication media. Place-based learning is always an instrument, learning management system that we can actually enjoy. How do you therefore do it? First, aking mga 5 P's: preserve, provide, refer, produce, and practice. Siyempre, you have to do the rationale, objective alignment. Therefore, you also would need, of course, meron kang deped requirement follow this as part of the rationale. Okay? This is the deped requirement, syllabus. Yung scope niya, nandito rin. Inputs mandated are also here. You follow that. It's in the methodology of the assessment or the learning objectives and learning competencies. No, the instrument for assessments or measuring of the assessments that can come yung methodology. You need actually the place inventory, the resource. It should be actually exploratory. How to discover it exploratory. And you actually prefer it as a first method. Hindi ko sinasabing do not prefer the other ones. I'm repeating. It's actually a complementary method. And then the learning results are actually signs. Be prepared to have a multiplicity of meanings and to actually to swim in wonder at the multiplicity of results that your students can actually give you. You as a teacher will also be enriched. I have been much enriched by that one already. Interpretation, messages, you produce. This is something that is produced. This is something that is produced. And then the outcomes, of course, actually they should be very significant and applicable. Something that you can practice in your life. Something that you can practice in your life. At the end of it all, it's actually the difference between meaning and significance. Kahulugan at kabuluhan. We should aim actually at place-based learning aims to arrive at the significance. Place-based learning. Okay, just a little mention. Okay, the key to success. This is the second to the last. The last slide will be the resources. Creative dreaming. If your students can do some creative dreaming, drama, drawings, even observing how the birds chirp, how the birds fly, how the trees actually break down their roots, yung leaves, different things around the leaves, it's also very good. Design participatory form assessment, reflect on the process of learning. This one for the teacher is very creative. The teacher in place-based learning is also a learner because she discovers also something that she has not or he has not taught before. Therefore, that process of learning is also important. There is a multiplicity of results, but there is also a multiplicity of learning that cannot be discounted. They acknowledge, and this one happens when you acknowledge the unintended outcomes, the ones that you do not expect. In the campus-based, oftentimes, you actually expect some of the knowledge intended outcome. That perfect siya ganito. Pero here, actually, yung unintended outcomes. Give opportunity to demonstrate knowledge to students. Look for indicators of student imaginative engagements. Drama, how they will do it. And consider output scores as part of a range of indicators. That it is not, it is actually part of a big number of indicators in terms of the assessments. Siguro one of the things that is to highlight this, as I have mentioned, ito lang, that all of us are actually students in a place-based learning. Even the teachers become learners because they learn from what the students as well discover. And I think it's in the discovery of learned meanings that education comes. It is in the discovery of learned meanings that learning and education comes. And kasi nga, Catholic pa rin tayo, discovered learned meanings rooted in our belief, Catholic faith, when you discover authentic Christian education. It is when you discover authentic Christian education. So here is, I just put back again this the leverage principles. And lastly, syempre, ito na yung mga acknowledgement sources that I have used here. John Dewey, 1938, 1902, remember? That's getting to know. There are actually a number of resources still here. And then a number of their programs that I'm trying to devise, at least for the teachers, in terms of how to teach or how to accompany children in a place-based learning in the Philippines. This in the Philippines. And with that, I'd like to end with this thought again that we have seen. We have seen a bit, we have that I have read already before. Without a context that is contextual, which is place-based, that becomes a narrative, life has no meaning. Without meaning, life has no purpose, and without purpose, our schools becomes houses of detention and not attention. So thank you very much for actually listening here. Thank you.